Loss comes in many forms, and usually in unexpected ways. It can be devastating, leaving you facing an uphill struggle to go on with life without someone you thought would always be there. But life does go on, and even in the deepest despair, we can find hope. Welcome to Grief Relief with your hosts, Drs. Gloria and Heidi Horsley, brought to you by the Open to Hope Foundation, helping people find hope after loss. And now here's Dr. Gloria and Dr. Heidi.
Welcome to our show. I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley with my co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, this is really an important show today, and it's really important because we have the Open to Hope website, and we have over 500,000 people visiting our site every year looking for hope after loss. And we found that the second thing most searched for on our site is parent loss.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of people are losing their parents at all ages.
That's right, and they're looking for that kind of information on the show. So we wanted to try to do more shows on parent loss because we know that you're looking for it out there. So, Heidi, we've got some great guests today, and one of them is a very good friend of yours. And you want to introduce, talk about who's going to be on the show today?
Sure. Dr. Cori Bussolari is my very dear friend, and we met the first day of my doctorate program 15 years ago, I think it was. And so, yes, she is a professor at University of San Francisco, and she's in private practice, and she is an expert on grief and loss and on resilience. So I cannot wait to have her here. I'm very excited to have her here.
And then we're going to have a special guest who's going to be talking to us about yoga. And a couple of weeks ago, we had Lynn Prashant on, and it's very key because Lynn Prashant brought him to the United States.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And are we going to say his last name right?
I don't know. I was thinking of that. He'll have to correct us when he comes on.
Okay.
Antonio Sausys.
Okay. Well, both of us were hoping the other one would say it.
Yes.
Antonio. But we're going to close the show with a fabulous band.
Yes.
And that's the Pali Rocks Band from Palo Alto High School. And the person that's brought the band to us is my grandson, Scott Horsley, Scotty.
Scotty Barra.
Scotty Barra. Oh, my gosh. Well, Scott Horsley actually did.
Well, this is true. I'm loving that she's saying Scott Horsley because Scott Horsley is my brother and Scotty Barra is my nephew, and he was named after my brother.
So there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they'll be playing, and they're going to take us out of the show, and it's going to be really wonderful. So let's start right now and interview Cori.
Okay.
All right. Cori, welcome to the show.
Hi, Cori.
Hi, thank you so much. It's so great to be here.
It's great to have you on, and you're such an inspiration because I know I've referred a lot of people to you because you have had so much trauma in your life, and you have just, used it. So I don't know how you've done it. Talk about your losses.
So when my dad got sick, initially got very sick when I was 5 years old, and had in, I think it was 1969, one of the first open heart surgeries ever done in the world.
Wow.
And then at the time, we never thought he would live. At least, my family just never did. But he lived another 6 or 7 years, but he died when I was 14 of coronary stuff. And 4 years after that, 4 or 5 years after that, my mother died of lung cancer.
Wow.
So I was pretty young when both my parents died.
You were 19 and had no parents.
No parents.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, because I was thinking about sort of the relationship, sort of the way, the trajectory of what happened to one parent when the other one died, and how that sort of impacted the relationship and the kind of the way that I experienced the loss as well, which was a pretty profound kind of situation. My mother, I kind of frame it like she died of a broken heart, because I think after he died, she just got sick. So,
and that can happen.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's very, very common to see that kind of stuff.
So you have to take care of yourself so that doesn't happen. You have to realize that there is a vulnerability that you have after the loss of a parent.
Absolutely, especially when you're young, and you really you know, everyone's telling you what to do when you're a teenager or you're, you know, a young adult. Everyone's telling you what they think you should be doing, and all you want to do is what makes you feel better, right? So we don't always make the best choices, but we really, really try to. So
I was wondering, when you work with families where there's been a parent loss, do you find that some of the kids get parentified to move into that spot?
Absolutely, and that is probably, I mean, there's a couple of things that happen, but two of the most common things that I see are the kids who completely withdraw from the family, or the ones that sort of take the place of the other parent. So a parent who has lost a spouse or a partner, and the kid sort of picks up the slack. You know, they're feeling really depressed, and they can't they can't take care of their business. They don't do the laundry, and the kids are all sort of picking up for that parent, and almost as if they're answering questions for them. You know, the parent doesn't speak. The kids speak for the parent because they just want to, you know, make sure the parent's okay, because then in return they feel safe. So if the other parent who's living is okay, then they can feel better. So
yeah, they have to take care of them. It's got to be scary. It must have been scary for you when your second parent died.
Absolutely. You know, I was just a sophomore. One of the choices I made was I graduated high school in 3 years instead of 4. At the time, I had certain reasons why I did it. Oh, this is such a great career move for me. But in retrospect, as an adult, I look back and I think, you know, it was really for me to get out of my house because it was so hard to be there.
Because your mom was sick.
Because my mom was sick. So, yeah. And I mean, it is true. You know, you sort of take care of your other parent in different ways.
Well, you know, sometimes you have to, we used to call it in family therapy, kick the other kid out of the box. They start having, you know, they've taken over this parental role, and then the other parent starts feeling better, and they've got this child who's kind of running their life. And
absolutely, absolutely. And it's interesting because I wanted to go to school close to home, and my mother wouldn't let me. It was sort of like, she said, you need to get away, you need to get away. So in essence, she sort of knew the structure of what you know, in her heart really needed to happen.
Right.
And she wanted you to have a normal experience
Yes.
at school. I mean, God bless her for doing that, right? Because it would have been easier for her to keep you closer.
I feel very grateful. I feel, you know, my parents died when I was young, but you know, what I got from them was more than if I had spent a whole lifetime for many people, their experiences. So I really have internalized a lot of that wonderfulness,
So
I guess I could call it.
Well, the thing about you, Cori, is you are seriously one of the most positive people I know. And
Thank you,
it
Heidi.
totally blows my mind that you were orphaned by 19. I mean, I've known you for 15 years because you're so positive all the time. And so it sounds like part of what you did was to, like you said, internalize your parents and keep them forever, like, in your heart and your mind and your memories.
And I try to. And, you know, in my work with teenagers who have lost parents, you know, as you guys know, you've written about working with teens in grief, that, you know, if you notice they're okay, you know, they sort of tell you what's going on, and you sort of have to take their lead. Some kids do very well, and they're okay without a lot of therapy. Others need a little more support. But when I was young, nobody offered anything. There was nothing out there to really offer. And I think the biggest thing is to be able to offer the kinds of services for teenagers who lose their parents, so that they don't feel isolated. They do feel like other people understand what's going on, and they don't feel like they have to hold it by themselves.
that kind of fits into that whole community thing we keep talking about, Heidi.
Oh, for sure.
We don't grieve alone, we grieve in community. And I think that's what's happening with Facebook, with the internet. I think we have just, we're coming into so much community.
Yeah, Facebook's a powerful way for teens to grieve, because it normalizes it, and that they realize I'm not the only person out there that's had a parent die or that's had a sibling die.
And they're getting feedback like, I'm so sorry,
Right.
you know, I feel for you.
Well, it
I'm
also
here.
gives everybody out there opportunity to pitch in and say, I mean, everybody's thinking, all the other teens are thinking, this is terrible, this is awful, and they could say, I'm really sorry that this has happened to you and all that kind of thing, because people are thinking about it, and they think about it for years. I mean, people are pretty darn compassionate out there, and now they're given the opportunity to express it.
And for teens to allow others to give them that.
And to see Facebook as a community thing that we can do. Well, listen, thank you so much for being on today, and we want you to say we're going to introduce our next guest, and then we want to take some questions. But what I want to say to everybody out there right now is the most important thing I think about seeing Cori right now is if you're a parent and your other spouse has died or whatever, that your kids will be okay.
Yes, I was just thinking that. This has not destroyed Cori's life. It's made her who she is today, a very resilient person and with a lot of strength. So that is an important message for parents.
Absolutely. Well, now,
thanks, Cori.
Thank you, Cori.
I love you. Thank you.
And now we're going to meet Antonio.
Yes.
You haven't met him. I have, Heidi. Well, you met him here, but I'd spent some time with him at the ADAC conference, Association of Deaf Educators. So got to know him a little bit. He's a fabulous guy, and I know you're going to enjoy meeting him. And we're going to have a roll-in of him talking about his yoga and his philosophy, and then we'll meet him in person.
Okay.
All right.
My mom and I were truly good friends. And when she died of a stroke at the age of 54, I was pushed into a split personality disorder that allowed me to not get in touch with my grief. When 2.5 years later I was finally able to do so, one of my ribs had created a calcification in the place where it meets the sternum bone, much like those the bones create after a fracture to strengthen the skeleton. I have not had an accident. And yet, what my body was expressing was quite clear. I had a broken heart. A few years later, my teacher and mentor, Lynn Prashant, an outstanding therapist from the San Francisco Bay Area, asked me to design a routine with yoga exercises to address the physical symptoms of grief. I was thrilled, hearing someone acknowledge that grief deeply impacts also the body. And so I created the Yoga for Grief Relief program. My program is not intended to help individuals not feel. Quite the opposite. It helps grievers be in touch with their full palette of symptoms of grief so they can understand and also determine that new identity that emerges after an important loss. As in many other moments in my life, yoga assisted me at a time of extreme difficulty, with that deep and insightful knowledge that put me a step closer to my spirit. I am Antonio Sausys.
All right, Heidi. Well, let's meet Antonio.
Okay.
Hey, Antonio.
Hey, Antonio.
Welcome to
Nice
the
to meet you.
show.
Hello, Gloria. Thanks for having me.
Great to see you.
Hello.
Well, Antonio, I love what you said about the palette. I think that is so great because you think of the palette of all the things about our life. It's not just one thing. Sometimes you think about grief as some big black hole that you fall into, and you tend to kind of put everything in the hole, but that's not really the way it is it? It's here and there and what we miss and that kind of thing.
And what's worse is that perhaps people just think that grief is associated with sadness, and that's all it happens. And the truth is that grief affects the mind, the body, and the spirit in particular ways. And so that's why I think it presents such a wide palette of feelings and emotions and sensations that unless addressed properly and in their entirety, then you're always missing one part.
Now, you didn't always know this, though. After your mom died, you really were close to her, and she was quite a character. I've seen some of her pictures, and quite a charmer.
She was.
And you were really close to her, and it just fractured you.
It did. And what is amazing is that I really managed to not feel, or to feel very little. My experience was that when the pain of grief would come, and this usually would be in the morning as you wake up, as it usually happens, and you realize your new reality, the pain would come and I would just switch, like with a little switcher, and under the premise that she didn't bring me up to be a sad creature crying in the corners. Here I was dancing,
Yeah,
going
and
out
where
with
were you?
girls.
Where were you
saying-
living then?
This was down in Uruguay.
Yeah, Uruguay.
Yes,
so,
Uruguay,
and you were
South
so you were
America.
dancing and
Yeah, dancing, straight A's at college, everything fine until 2.5 years later when I finally was able to get in touch, but then my body had created this spur, this calcification, and
now how
I
did
learned.
you find yoga?
Well, I had found yoga before from a spiritual standpoint. Most of my friends, when I was 20, right after my mom died, were devotees of Maharaji, a master from India, but that lives here in Malibu. And they all shared this amazing quality that while being able to be up for normal teenage things or young men things, at the same time they had this depth and this ability to get in touch with some of these aspects of life, the spiritual aspects. So I was interested in what they had that I didn't. So I got the techniques, the meditation techniques. From a physical standpoint, I was doing Olympic gymnastics at the YMCA. There was this famous yoga class that all the pretty women were going to. So I decided to go, and I put a vertebra out of place. And the second time I went there, the teacher said, "But you seem to do things pretty well. How long have you been practicing it?" This is my second time. He said, "What? This is a teacher's training course." So that's why. And he said, "Stay. I'll put your vertebra back in place." So, of course, that put me in the center of the class for 2 months. I said, yes, I'll do it. And I learned firsthand the effects of yoga therapy.
How did you meet Lynn? Croissant?
That was years after when she was in South America directing a health spa. And they needed a yoga teacher, so I was directed to her. I was referred to her. We met. And in the course of the first conversation, she was so excited. And she said, "Oh, could you design a routine," as I said in the bureau. And I was impressed because people don't think that grief happens in the body, and it does.
Right. Okay, so here I am. I've just lost a parent. And what can I do? I'm feeling like really inward.
Well, there you have it.
Yeah.
One of the things you need to do is to open.
Just open.
To start opening. And I wouldn't suggest as it happens, you know, some therapists see an anxious individual and they say, "Calm down, breathe deeply." That's cruel because a person who's anxious can't calm down and breathe. So I wouldn't say just open, but that's the first thing you need to do. To stretch the pectoral muscles in a way that all the type of emotions that are contained or held in those muscles can experience a change as your muscles do. And then if you can follow up with that change and work with it, then you start operating a change in your process.
Well, and I know sometimes when people do heart openers in yoga and they've had a loss, all of a sudden they'll start to cry.
Well, that's why.
Okay.
Precisely,
because
that's
they're
why.
opening the heart?
Because they're opening the heart, and because our bodies naturally, our bodies are master survivors.
Right.
So when we have a situation as losses, which puts you sometimes at the edge of your survival mechanisms and skills, we tend to close up and protect the inner organs and the vital organs that carry vital functions. And so also because grief is related to the heart, to the emotional heart, and for yoga to Anahat chakra, or the place where the energy of emotional bonding lives in the body. When we have a problem with that, we tend to close.
Okay, now I know we can find you. We love the internet. We can find you on the internet.
You can, yogaforgriefrelief.com.
Okay, yogaforgriefrelief.com. Let's take some questions from our audience for these two, Heidi.
Cori, I understand you like animals. Have they helped you through your losses?
Oh, goodness. Yes, I have to say, and that it's
If people didn't hear that, you love animals.
I
right?
love animals. It's a whole different show, but absolutely. Animals, the bonding we have with animals is very similar to the bonds we have with humans in the way in which we can draw support from just holding. So much research about how it helps our physical and mental health. Just holding and petting them and bonding with them is immense. So absolutely, yes.
Antonio, do you have something special you do to remember your mom?
My work. I would say that my work is what I do because every time I can assist other individuals in going through the process of grieving and through loss, I am reminded that she didn't die in vain, and that after all, even though it took me 2.5 years to start and then complete, what she wanted, that was for me to be an alive individual and not be defined by my grief, I continuously do. So in helping others not be defined by their grief, I find that I'm still in relationship with her.
Wow. That service aspect is so important.
Yep.
When we can finally move out into service to other people, it is so freeing.
And because as we do it for others, we're doing it for ourselves.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Boy.
I have a question for Cori, and I guess maybe for both of you. Is there any rituals you do to remember your parents? I lost my parents a few years ago. And any rituals you do, like yearly rituals, or to remember?
My parents were very connected to music, and my connection with music is from my parents, and they used to always sing to me and sing to each other. And so one of the rituals I do when I really want to feel connected to my parents is to play music that they used to play for me from, I was just playing one today from like Otis Redding, or just things that make me feel so connected, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. And in my case, it's interesting how the body remembers beyond what the mind wants to remember, because around the time of my mom's birthday, my body starts to feel some of the symptoms I felt back when she died. So I know the time is coming, and that's when I do a little, lighting of a candle and just celebrating her life, and thinking that through me there's an aspect of her that continues on, and asking for that light to illuminate, to enlighten my process as she did when she was alive.
I like that. The candle's so great. Well, Heidi, another one. Good.
Okay, one more question. Do you understand?
I'm curious how you convince, or how I could help convince clients to have men in their lives get into yoga.
Good question.
Yeah, there are a lot of women in the yoga classes.
Okay,
I've noticed
yes,
that.
but I'll tell you two things. First of all, convince him that it's not a girly thing. Yoga was passed from brother to brother and from fathers to sons for thousands of years before actually getting to the West and having women take over it. The second one, tell him we're not going to talk about it. We're going to do some things. They can come to the class and have an experience in their body that then they will be in a position of choosing whether they want or not to talk about it. Because as you know, sometimes we don't like to talk about so much things, but rather experience them.
I've got one more. Show them Antonio's website, and they'll see that real men do yoga.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, both of you. It's been wonderful having you on the show today.
Thank you very much.
And it is great, and we know you're having fun. Well, Heidi, it's been a great show today, and we thank everybody for watching the show and learning more about parent loss, and we wish well to all those people who have lost their parents and find that healing process through yoga and through just understanding.
Absolutely. Very important show.
And now we bring you Chris Donahoe from the Grief Relief Archive.
Light and dark a blur, pray to some cruel saboteur, and you march. And some wars can't be won, somehow you knew it all along, and you march. You don't lay your weapons down. Your feet numb to the ground. March to your own drummer. March, beautiful brother, wherever and will when you march. And lost is any choice, but lost is not your voice, and you march. And what's broken can't disguise a tireless, brilliant mind. March to your own drummer. March, beautiful brother, wherever you are. The beat of your heart will march. Will march. And march with the pain.
This has been Grief Relief, hosted by the mother-daughter team of Dr. Gloria and Dr. Heidi Horsley. This show's been brought to you by the Open to Hope Foundation, helping people find hope after loss. Be sure to visit Dr. Gloria and Dr. Heidi at opentohope.com, where you can listen to radio programs, watch past episodes of Grief Relief, read articles, and view books. You can also join them on Twitter and Facebook and put your events on their international calendar. Thanks for watching, and remember, others have been there and made it, and you can too.